China's one-child policy came about in the late 1970s to address rapid population growth, first encouraged by Mao Zedong. This graph shows China's total fertility rate, which represents the number of children per woman. It peaked after Mao's Great Leap Forward in 1963, then steadily declined over the next 2 decades as Mao's successor pushed the idea that fewer children means faster prosperity. It's estimated that the policy has prevented more than 300 million births and pulled 200 to 400 million Chinese out of poverty. China's one-child policy has been globally regarded as an intrusive, dangerous government regulation that has disastrous consequences for society. One of these most well-known consequences is the amount of illegal, sex-selective abortions that take place due to China's cultural preference for boys.
Millions of poor Chinese families who aborted babies when they knew they were going to have a girl.
It remains one of the most controversial issues.
And a government policy in China which a great many Americans will find offensive.
Routinely face forced sterilizations and forced abortions.
Forced abortions.
On the garbage dumps that surround Beijing, scavengers from time to time will find a newborn baby girl amid the stinking refuse. Sometimes she's still alive. Every year, say researchers, perhaps 1 million girl fetuses are aborted, and tens of thousands of girl babies are abandoned.
The traditional preference for boys has been exacerbated by the one-child policy and has put tremendous pressure on women to produce a male heir. China's ratio of male births to female births now far exceeds any other nation at a startling 118 male babies to every 100 female babies.
This is a huge problem for China. We already have about 20 million boys who will never be able to marry because there aren't enough women. That number rises by 1.5 million every year. It'll bring crime and prostitution. It'll destabilize China.
But if the consequences of the one-child policy are so obviously detrimental, why would China even attempt it? The answer is to combat a problem that is becoming of grave global concern: rapid population growth.
And I'm still shocked that not more people are disturbed by population growth. And I think it's because, as a species, we've decided not to talk about it. Modern man first showed up on Earth 200,000 years ago. And by 1850, we had reproduced so successfully there were 1 billion people on the planet. That means it took 200,000 years for us to put the first billion people on Earth. The next billion came in 100 years. Now, the world population is growing at just 1% a year, which might not sound like very much, but 1% of 7 billion is actually a big number. It means that every day we add 220,000 people to the planet. 220,000.
The UN has estimated that the world will add another 2.6 billion people by 2050. Rapid population growth has placed incredible stress on the Earth's resources. Global demand for water has tripled since the 1950s, and 500 million people live in water-stressed or water-scarce areas. In the last 50 years, cropland has been reduced by 13% and pasture by 4%. So could it be that the Chinese government was thinking along the right lines when it set out to mitigate population growth all those years ago? We all know the negative repercussions of the one-child policy, but were there any positive results we can learn from? The Chinese one-child policy has allowed families to commit more time and monetary resources to their single child than they would be able to commit to multiple children. This graph shows the percentage of total expenditure spent on education for a single child as opposed to a family with at least 2 children.
They only have 1 child, so they can spend all their attention and resources on me, so I can be better educated comparing if I have several brothers and sisters.
Can there be any middle ground? Is there a way to mitigate population growth while experiencing the benefits of smaller families without the horrible consequences experienced in China? China has recently loosened its policy in a manner which allows for many couples to have 2 children.
China's President Xi Jinping recently announced sweeping reforms, among them a relaxation on its one-child policy. So couples may now have a second child if either of the parents was an only child him or herself.
Hopefully, the new policy will reduce sex-selective abortion and increase the number of young people to enter China's labor force in the next generation. Globally, the world can learn a lot from many of the lessons presented by the one-child policy. STS has shown us that most issues aren't one-dimensional, but instead they are nuanced, complicated, and often produce results that may force us to change our thinking.
Half an hour to school, which is in the next village.
In my research of China's one-child policy, I have come to the conclusion that rapid population growth is a massive, urgent problem. But even more than that, it is a massive, urgent problem that can be solved. North Americans and Western Europeans account for 60% of private consumption spending, while South Asians and Sub-Saharan Africans account for 3.2%. It is of the utmost importance that we not only learn to be less wasteful, but that we change the way we think about what family means and what we owe to future generations. Forcing people to have fewer children does not work, not without grave repercussions. The plan I recommend is to educate people on the dangers of overpopulation and wasteful living. As STS learners, we are able to think about global issues critically, and this is one we should all dedicate our brain power to.